The idea came from the murder of a cheerleader, and they found a long blonde hair follicle. And I think that the idea really came from, I'll demonstrate it here today, which is if you take your thumb and first finger and you yank out your eyebrow hairs, at the very end of that is a tag cell or a seed attached because the hair was yanked out in a struggle. And I thought to myself at that point, wow, all of that information came out just on one single hair follicle. And I realized that the body at that point is the perfect specimen for crime solving, and the idea for CSI was born.
Here comes the nerd squad.
CSI did not come to my attention. Initially, it was Anthony Zuiker, who I had read a spec script of his about a year before we started developing CSI, and tried very hard to get Anthony to come in for a meeting. And eventually, his agent got him to come and sit down. And I just said to him, if you were to do a TV series, what would it be? And he had his show about forensic investigators, and it'd be a great, cool way to do a crime and a mystery show. And I said, great, let's do it. He kind of left there and said, I think I sold the show. Like he did.
I think it was Jonathan who said, I have this young writer who I'd love you to meet, and he's got a terrific idea that I think you'll like. And so Anthony Zuiker came in the office. I don't think he ever sat down. I think he just paced back and forth and told a wonderful story. And we were smart enough to say, hey, we want to do this.
It's the end of the season. I was driving home. I got a call from Jonathan Littman, and he said, look, I have a pitch. I know it's late, but you have to hear this pitch. I said, Jonathan, I can't.
I think I begged.
And then there's that little voice that creeps up inside of you, which says never say no to hearing a pitch, because you never know which is going to be the pitch that becomes the next big hit. So I said, okay, we'll hear the pitch. I said, but Jonathan, you know, we're full up, we've overbought. But he said, I promise you. Jonathan said, you will not be disappointed.
I remember being so upset or just depressed that NBC and Fox didn't want to see me, and ABC already passed, and Jonathan said, if you don't sell it here, it's dead. And I was like, well, that's your big pick-me-up speech? And I shut my eyes just like this, and it was just Nina and Jonathan, me. And I said, the show's called CSI, Crime Scene Investigation.
Then Anthony launched, and he just brought the whole show to life. And to listen to him pitch that show, you could visualize every moment, because he had everything. He had the visuals, the snap zooms, and you could see Nina just her mind just rolling and rolling.
He did a great pitch, and I bought it in the room.
Nina came in to me and said, you know, Bruckheimer and Anthony Zuiker, a writer, a young man I had never heard of. And Nina is very enthusiastic when she pitches things, and she pitched it to me. And obviously, you know, I liked the pitch, and we decided to go ahead with the script deal.
We went through this entire process and took their notes, and then who could play this character? I mean, that's something that is always the most difficult thing, to find the right actor. And I think it was Les Moonves that always wanted to be in business with Billy Peterson.
The network had a holding deal with Billy Peterson. And there was something about the character that I thought, you know what, this is going to appeal to Billy. And I sent Anthony to go meet with Billy, and I think they had like a 4-hour meeting together.
Moonves and I wanted to do something for a long time, or we thought we would do something, but I didn't want to play a lawyer, I didn't want to play a doctor, I didn't want to play a cop. That's why I think why Nina thought it was so different. She threw it to us, and we got done with that meeting after about an hour and a half of him just screaming about this and that. We'll go inside the body and we'll see the inside of the heart explode. In fact, the maitre d' had to come over like twice and say, excuse me, could you keep it down a little bit? There's women here having tea. And we walked out
I remember
to get my car.
You said to me, oh, it's going to be too dark and too smart, and they're never going to do it, so let's develop it. Let's do it.
Billy said, you know, I want to make this pilot. I mean, that carries a lot of weight at a network.
Right after we called Nina and said, let's try and do this, then we started meeting with Anthony and Jonathan Littman, and we talked about the pilot. It hadn't been written yet. And then I remember going to Las Vegas and spending 2 or 3 days with them talking about the pilot. I had such a good time with him. He was such a breath of fresh air that it was fun.
I read the pilot. I remember liking it very much. A very good script, a very good character. I could hear Billy's voice in that character. And this one also had some very special elements to it. I was fascinated by it.
It was like nothing I'd ever read before. It moved like at the speed of sound.
It was so different from anything that was on network TV. The storytelling was unique. I mean, Anthony used flashbacks, and so it had so many unique elements in it. I had to read it a couple times to really know what we had.
I loved it. It was very, very dense because you had forensic terminology. The characters were fantastic. You also had what has come to be known as the CSI shots written into the body of the text.
It was written so simply, and I can't tell you how hard it is to write that simply. There were very few compound sentences or paragraphs. People talk in dashes, and this got that. And also, Anthony had created archetypes, and to me it was so sweet because even their names told you who they were. Catherine Willows, Captain Brass, you know. Grissom's name was, I think, Shinebaum.
He named his character Gil Shinebaum, which I thought was great. I'll play Gil Shinebaum. Until Les Moonves said, you can't play Gil Shinebaum.
Billy is a brilliant actor, but you don't think Jewish when you first see him. So I'm glad we changed the name of the character.
Hi. Sorry. Welcome to Forensics. Gil Grissom. I'm your supervisor on Graveyard.
I mean, we had a very short prep, and we had to move quickly. And we made a lot of offers to directors. A lot of directors were not available, and it was tight. And Jerry Bruckheimer, Jonathan Lippman brought Danny Cannon to our attention.
Danny Cannon is somebody that I'd followed his career when he made The Young Americans. I said, whoever made this movie is really talented. He has a real visual style, he knows how to tell a story, he understands character. And I said, that's somebody I want to work with.
We met with him at a coffee shop, and he showed us a bunch of lenses and ideas he would do for the script, and it felt like he had a vision to elevate the pilot. And we went with him, and as luck would have it, he shot something extraordinary and set the tempo for the signature of the show to this day.
I was meeting Jerry regarding a movie. There was a pilot that had just gotten it picked up, and he was a little worried because it was like 3 weeks before they had to shoot it. It had no director. And I read it that night. It was really good. Our expectations of a crime scene were always, here comes the detective, you know, here comes the cop. This was about the guys who came in after that. The next day they were casting. So I went down to casting, met Billy, and just fell into it. I couldn't say no at that point.
We didn't have anybody. We had me. And then we had all these other characters that we were going to have to cast. And I think it was Les that called up and said, how about Mark Helgenberger?
Well, I very distinctly remember the bold type that said, Catherine Willows, her introduction into the story, Catherine Willows, CSI 3, single mother, ex-stripper. Because it really informs who this woman is and this interesting career path that she's had.
Stick with it. At least until you solve your first, and if after that you don't feel like King Kong on cocaine, then you can quit.
The interesting thing about greenlighting CSI was the fact that you're waiting for this mysterious phone call from New York City, whether you're going to board a plane and go to the upfronts or not. And upfronts, of course, is the general announcement of the CBS schedule. So I remember waiting for the phone to ring, and I remember it ringing, and Nina was live from New York, and she called and said, congratulations, you're on the air. And then literally it was you're thrown into pre-production, trying to find a showrunner, trying to find actors, casting, and it was a complete learning by fire. For someone who's never did television before, we needed help quickly to surround this dream team, and as luck would have it, we had one.
Making a pilot is a very tricky thing. You have 44 minutes within which to establish the entire universe of a series. You have characters to introduce, you have a story to tell, you have a visual style, a template to establish. So it really requires, you know, a great deal of craftsmanship.
The show needed a showrunner because that's not what I do. So needed a general executive producer partner that can keep the show running if it goes to series beyond just the pilot.
The same pilot season that Anthony was developing CSI, I was developing another pilot for Nina Tassler and CBS. Anthony's pilot went, and my pilot didn't. And I got a call the next day from Nina Tassler, and she said, we really want to keep you in the CBS family. How about CSI?
Carol I had known from Melrose Place, and what I knew about Carol, she had one of the greatest bizarre minds of any writer I knew.
She'd been associated with very successful television shows. She really worked her way up through the ranks. She was a proven showrunner.
And I met with Anthony, met him for the first time. Jonathan Lippman, I met Billy Peterson and his producing partner, Cindy Shavato, and Jim Hart, who was going to produce the pilot. And it went great. And I really thought it went better than any interview I ever had. And then I got the job, and I started on CSI the first day of filming, and that's the day I met Danny Cannon, and I've been on it now for 12 seasons.